Okay, we are going to be getting started. It is great to have you all here. I'm going to be sharing my screen because it's a presentation today. So you should be able to all see that. And if you can't, you can just drop a note into the chat. Okay, so welcome everyone officially to today's masterclass. And today's topic is on interviews. And I am here to help you to get, in effect, what I am calling interview ready and to be able to show up with confidence and get hired. And confidence is going to be a theme that I'm going to be weaving throughout today's masterclass. So you're going to hear me use that term often because it is just so important. For those of you who don't know, my name is Hayley, and I have helped thousands of people in their careers over the years. And I've done this in various different ways. I own a recruitment company called Wild Dreams Hospitality, which many of you will probably be familiar with. And we help people get matched to their dream jobs. I also am a career coach and I've been coaching for over 5 years now. And I do offer one-on-one interview prep sessions as well. So interviews are a topic that I am incredibly familiar with. And then, of course, we help people through these masterclasses. We have quite a lot of masterclasses that we have done over the last couple of years. And we are going to drop in the chat our YouTube channel link and we upload all of them there. So if you are interested in learning more, we've got a few different topics such as limiting beliefs and one on CVs. So definitely go and check that out when you have a chance. So I want to share a few things to help you get the most out of today's masterclass. First of all, Dom is here behind the scenes. So if you do see her dropping some notes or information in the chat, then that is who she is. So if you need anything, she is there. I would highly recommend that you try and limit any distractions that are around you just for the next hour. So I'm talking about people in the room with you. Just ask if they could leave you be for a little while. And also if you have your phone close by, we love to, it's just a natural thing to pick up our phones and start scrolling. So I would definitely recommend that you turn your phone off or you just get it somewhere far away that you can't reach it. I do also recommend that you have a notebook and a pen to hand because you probably will want to take a few notes today. However, if you do prefer to just be fully present and just listen to what's going on, then we will email you a recording of this as well as you having access to it on our YouTube channel. So if you just go and subscribe there, then you'll get access anyway. And of course, the beauty of having it direct to your inbox as a recording is that eventually when you do have an interview, if that isn't the case for you right now, then I would highly recommend that you watch this prior to any interviews because it will act as a refresher just to help you with all of that. We are also providing our interview ebook for you today. So Dom is going to pop that in the chat for you. And this is a tool that you can use to support you after today's class. And you'll just be able to download that and save that to your computer. And I do encourage engagement always in these masterclasses. It will help you to get the most out of this. And it also honestly gets the most out of me as well, because if I can see that you are engaging and then I know that you are wide awake and that you are paying attention to what I am saying. We will not have time for direct questions today because we are trying to fit in a ton in 1 hour. But Dom will also put our social media in the chat, and that is the best way to reach out to me if you do have questions after the masterclass. I also always appreciate a message, just hearing like how you have found it and if you have any feedback for us. So to start things off, like I said, engagement is really nice. So I'd love for you to engage in the chat and ultimately tell me in effect why you are here today. So kind of like what is your situation at present? Maybe you are job hunting, maybe you are in the process of interviewing, or maybe you want to start looking for a position in the near future. Or it may just be that you are here to learn and you thought that this was a good opportunity. So I would just love if you could just take a minute and drop some info in the chat. I will be keeping an eye out here for all comments. Okay, job hunting, great. Well, this is going to really help you. Okay. Oh, an interview tomorrow. Oh, amazing. What perfect timing. Okay, also job hunting. Yeah, want to learn. Okay, great. So there's kind of a range of reasons here, but it seems like the majority of you are actively job hunting, which is fantastic because this is going to be like fresh in your mind and yeah, just really help you. Okay, so I feel free to continue to add in the chat, and we'll get to the other comments. I want to also start by asking another question. I want you to imagine for a minute that you are about to walk into an interview, and all I want to know is how that makes you feel in this moment. Even if you just want to put one word in the chat, that's absolutely perfect. Lots of people are saying they're job hunting. Okay, anxious, yeah. Unprepared. Nervously excited. Nervous, nervous, okay. Confident, but always wondering about questions. Stressed out, yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Jade, for your comment there because I figured that at least one of you was going to say stress. Hence my preparation of this slide here. And I knew it was going to come up. And honestly, this is for most people very stressful and to the point where sometimes people even get physical symptoms. And if you think about it, it's completely natural. You are putting yourself in a situation where you are going to be judged. And typically, as a society, we try to avoid being judged and we don't like it. So it is understandable that your stress levels would be high when you think about an interview. Today, my hopes are that the next time you do have an interview, like for one of you, it's going to literally be tomorrow, that your stress levels are going to be nearly non-existent. And I do believe that that is definitely possible. Additionally, I want you to come away today feeling confident. And like I said at the very beginning, confidence really is very important. I am going to be saying this word multiple times today. And you may have seen when you signed up for our masterclass, you would have signed up via the Zoom registration link. And we added something there that I want to share with you now, because honestly, if there is one thing that you take away from today, I would like you to remember this. And that is that it is not always the person who is best suited to the job that gets the job, but it is the one who is most confident in their skills and their abilities and the one that is most prepared. I'm going to say that one more time. It is not always the person that is best suited to the job that gets the job. It is the one who is the most confident in their skills and their abilities and the one that is most prepared. And when I say prepared, because I know at least a couple of people mentioned about feeling like they're not prepared, we're talking about being prepared for the interview, yes, and we're going to be talking about that a lot today, but we're also talking about being prepared to communicate why you are ideal for the role, which falls into the category of confidence. So, firstly, and I know this applies to at least one person who's mentioned in the chat, but if you do have an interview coming up, then I want to say congratulations. It's important to acknowledge this, and it's vital for confidence that you cultivate a positive mindset. And this is important throughout the entire job search, not just the interview process, because let's be honest, the entire process of looking for a job can be stressful. And it can kind of feel like you're just going through the motions and you're just taking the steps that you need to take to get to your end goal. So I really encourage you that when you do get an interview, take a minute to just pause, take a breath, and celebrate it, because getting an interview is an achievement and mindset is a huge part of success. So I now want you to imagine that I'm asking you that same question that I just asked you a minute ago about how you would feel if you're about to walk into an interview. With the right preparation, the right mindset, interviews can be way less intimidating and may even be something that you could look forward to, and perhaps even fun, dare I say it. So I would love to hear from you in the chat now how you would like to feel the next time you are walking into an interview. So again, you can just share one word. So it's probably going to be a different word to what you already shared. Excited, prepared, confident, confident, excited and confident, confident, great. Yeah, I love that. Okay, you are in the right place because we've been talking about confidence and preparation already today. And preparation equals confidence. And I cannot say enough, do not wing it. You can't wing an interview and you need to be fully ready. So we're going to dive in now to really talk about some methods and information to help you be prepared for an interview. First of all, I just want to touch on the different types of interviews, and I'm going to be sharing a few what I would believe to be pretty basic tips around all of these. Not all interviews look the same, and being familiar with the type of format can help you to be more prepared. You are already probably going to be a bit stressed and nervous, like we've discussed before attending an interview. So the last thing you need is on top of that to be stressed about, for example, your technology or not understanding the platform you're going to be using, etc. So the different types of interviews we tend to see are telephonic and then video calls and in person and then working interviews, which also includes assignments. Telephonic interviews where you're literally just talking on a phone are not that common these days. They may happen if perhaps you do not have much signal, but normally we're talking video calls as the first point of contact for an interview. And this could be a WhatsApp call, a Zoom call, Teams, Google Meet. There's a variety of different platforms that you may use. One super small tip I want to share is if you are doing a WhatsApp interview, or you're even using one of the other platforms and you are using your phone because maybe you don't have a laptop, please do not hold your phone while you are talking to someone. It's incredibly distracting and it happens all the time and you're kind of like moving it around. So if you are using your phone, then just prop it up against something. Where possible, I would always recommend using a laptop though. But it's important that you understand the platform that you are using. You can just do a YouTube video on how to use it and get it set up first. You will possibly need to download it onto your laptop. Make sure you are checking your microphone works, checking your camera works, and of course, make sure that you have good signal for an online call. When you are doing an online interview, it's important that you are ready in the same way that you potentially would be if it was an in-person interview, because typically this is step one. So if you don't kind of like pass this telephonic or this online interview, then you may not be invited for an in-person interview. So it's just small tips around making sure that your background and the settings around you are clean and tidy, not distracting. Think about the atmosphere atmosphere you're trying to create. You could use a background on a Zoom call, for example. Dom's got one up at the moment if you want to take a look at her and you can see what I mean by that. Think about lighting, make sure that people can actually see you, distractions in and around the room. Like a lot of these platforms like Zoom, for example, does a really good job of canceling out the noise around you. So I'm less concerned that people are going to hear what's around you, but it will be distracting for you. And if you've got your children or your pets or just other noises around you, then you are not going to be able to focus. Also, we will be talking a little bit more about what I recommend you wear for an interview in a moment. But with an online interview, people often are not too worried about what they look like or what they're wearing, but you really should be. And this is not just related to the fact that they can literally see you, they can see what you are looking like. But more than that, it is about your mindset. If you are going to put on clothes that are slightly smarter than normal and you know in your mind that you have made an effort, then you are going to feel more professional and it is just going to switch your mindset over into more of a professional one, which is exactly what you need before an interview. Now, I want to touch on in-person and working interviews and just a few basic tips around these. With an in-person interview, the first thing I want to say is that we as a company highly recommend that you do go to in-person interviews and not necessarily accept a job where you haven't already done that if you are physically working on site. So the exception to this may be if you have a remote job and in effect your office is your home. It may not be necessary for you to physically go and meet someone, but if possible, you should take the opportunity to go in person and meet the team, understand the environment, the location, see where you're going to be working. You need to know where you are going, directions, incredibly important, but also like where on the property. Like when you get there, where do you go? Who do you ask for? You need to already have planned out logistically, how are you going to get there? Like if you are going by taxi, does the taxi get you close enough to where you need to be? If you are driving your car, do you have fuel? Are your tires okay? Just make sure that you have considered every possible scenario and situation so that that is one less thing you need to worry about. For a working interview, now typically these would be between 1 and 3 days. It is not common for a working interview to be more than 3 days. And you would need to ask in advance, what do you need to bring? Like, what do you need to know? What do you need to bring? Just make sure that you are prepared in that way. You may also be given assignments related to the position you're applying for the employer to determine if you do have the skills and the experience that they would need. And this can be a good opportunity for you to also have an understanding about the types of tasks you would be doing in the role. So again, if you get given a task, if you are unsure in any way, then make sure that you ask because you don't want to just assume or if you are just not sure, then you could, of course, get it wrong, and that would be a real shame. I do want to mention, and I feel like this is a different topic in itself, so just very, very briefly, you need to use your judgment when you are doing a working interview or when you are doing task assignments for a potential employer. If you feel like something is a little bit off, like maybe the working interview is for too long, they're not offering to pay you, for example, and you feel like maybe you're just being used because they need an extra pair of hands, then that is definitely a bit of a red flag. And the same goes for assignments, like if they're asking you to do tasks that will literally take you many hours, or if you can imagine if you had a client and it's the sort of task that they would pay you to do, then again, bit of a red flag. So use your judgment related to that. Okay, so another thing is to have an understanding of who is going to be present for the interview. You are not always going to know this in advance. So that is why I'm also sharing this now, because if you are prepared that there may be multiple people in the room, then you are not going to be stressed when you see that there are multiple people in the room. So this kind of like mentally prepares you. But the typical people that are going to be present will be the HR manager, then the general manager, and the head of department or the supervisor related to the position that you are applying for. So there really could be many people. And this is also an opportunity for you to change your mindset around that. So instead of feeling overwhelmed, like you have to speak to all these different people, think about it as an opportunity to impress not just one person, but literally multiple people. And when you do have many people in a room that are interviewing you, then just try and make sure that you are able to engage all of them, understand who each of them are, make sure you have introduced yourself to every person, understand what their role is, like take an interest in them because they will really appreciate that. So now let's talk about research, which is so incredibly important to the point where I would say that if you have or haven't researched the employer, the property, etc., the company, it could make a difference as to whether you get the job offer or you don't. And they will know if you have done your research. And doing research will show to them that you are, one, smart enough to actually do research about the company, but two, it's going to show that you are enthusiastic. Because if you think about it, every company wants someone to want to work for them. And if you have done your research, then they are going to feel like you have made the effort and that you care about the company, you care about what they have to say. And luckily, we all have the internet at our fingertips. So you have many different ways and means of doing research on a company. Obviously, their website, their social media, they may have multiple platforms. So keep that in mind. I highly recommend just Googling them because you never know what's going to pop up. It could be an award that they have won. It could be an interview that the CEO did. Maybe you're going to get some important information from doing that. LinkedIn is also a great place to have a look and learn about the company. Normally, companies have pages there, but also you will have exposure and access to people that already work for the company, as well as people who maybe previously worked for the company. I also added TripAdvisor in here, which obviously is only relevant for hospitality and tourism industries, but potentially many of you are in that sector. So that's a good opportunity to have a look at the reviews and what are guests saying about them, because that is the sort of thing that you could bring up into an interview. And what you are looking for when you are researching the company is what their company values are, what the culture is, like just their entire ethos, their mission, their vibe, and also recent news and information. Like, what is something that is unique about them? What are they doing that no one else is doing? What are they talking a lot about? Because again, these are the sorts of things that you will be able to bring up in conversation in your interview. So I said that we would talk a bit about outfits and what you should wear for an interview. Because it is important, first impressions, you only have one opportunity, like they say, to make a first impression. And in my opinion, you can focus on my 3 C's, which are comfort, class, and confidence. Comfort literally meaning that you should be comfortable in whatever you choose to wear. You do not want to be sat there and you're just like not comfortable because the shirt you're wearing is too tight because it was the only shirt that you have, or maybe your high heels that you decided to wear because they look nice, you literally can't walk in and you just feel like an idiot as you're walking in. So make sure you really and truly feel comfortable in your clothes. Class really relates to just making an effort, being a little bit smart. Typically for interviews, you can't really go wrong if you kind of have the mindset of like business casual. And obviously, you need to make sure your clothes are clean, that you look neat, that ultimately there is some professionalness to what you're wearing. And the last one, like I said, is confidence. So there's that word again. Like you have to feel confident in what you are wearing. And if you do feel confident, then that will reflect in how you come across and how you appear. And I also want to add that it is okay to show personality in what you are wearing. You don't need to be super like boring in your clothing outfits. And if you like to add a bit of color or whatever it is, then absolutely feel free to do that. Another tip I have is to, when you've done your research on the company, you will probably pick up a little bit on the types of outfits that they will be wearing in the day to day. So if you do have an idea of that, then kind of matching the types of clothing that they would be wearing is a good idea. You know, sometimes you just have people that are more casual, and it's going to be better for you to maybe be a bit more casual. Or other times, the company is just really values people that are very put together and very, very extra smart, in which case, then you can also take that into consideration when you're choosing your outfit. So now let's move on to talk about when you are like physically already now at the interview, and body language is important. Body language and general etiquette. I'm going to group all of this together. Um, the first thing I want to say is the importance of greeting everyone. Now, I don't think that anyone would deliberately ignore someone, but of course, when you are nervous and it can happen. You can kind of just forget. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. If you are walking into a reception area and maybe the hiring manager greets you in the corner and is directing you into a room where you're going to have the interview, and now you have walked past two people that are at reception and you didn't even look their way, you didn't smile at them, you didn't greet them, etc., then that potentially could reflect negatively on you later on. You know, you don't know what's going to be said later. Someone says, oh, you know, that person, they didn't even like greet me. And again, like I say, it's probably unlikely you would do it deliberately, but it is something to keep in mind. Eye contact is important, and eye contact with everyone. So if you do have multiple people in the interview with you, then you should be making eye contact with everybody, even if it is one main person that is asking you the questions, because you want everyone to feel included. I do want to say, like, don't overdo it. Don't stare at people, because that could be a little bit weird. And of course, we've all heard it, shaking hands, the firm handshake. It is generally important not to be too firm, but also it does reflect an air of confidence. When you walk into a room and that is where you're having the interview, then always just wait to be seated. Don't just kind of sit down. Don't just assume. Someone will direct you to a seat. And once you have sat down, try not to fidget too much, because that can happen when the nerves kick in. You might be like moving your hands around a lot or shaking your foot a lot. So just try and be mindful of that. And if you do catch yourself doing it, then that's okay. Like, don't worry, just stop. Also, just in terms of being polite, like some typical things that even our parents tell us not to do, you know, like don't put your elbows on the table, don't slouch over. You should be sitting upright. And again, if you are, that is going to imply that you are confident. And when you are talking to someone, it's okay to use your hands to communicate and be expressive, but consider being open when you do so. So I know you can't really see my hands too well at the moment, but like if I'm talking now and I'm using my hands and I'm sort of like doing this gesture to explain something and I'm opening my hands, that's a feeling of like of warmth and openness and friendliness. But if I was sat here and I had my arms sort of crossed while I was talking to you right now, then you may be like, oh, what's wrong with her? And it's a little bit of a cold impression. And yeah, I mean, you might think I'm a bit grumpy or something like that. And no one wants to work with that kind of energy. So energy is important. Also, it's okay to smile. Again, you are going to probably feel a bit stressed. So try and remember to smile and smile authentically. When people are talking to you, you can nod to show that you have heard what they're saying. So to show that you are listening. Another tip is to pause as much as you need to. it is much better to pause before you answer a question than just sort of rambling and saying something. One small tip is to have a glass of water with you. Normally, people will ask if you want something to drink, so always say yes, get some water, and just to take a sip, because even though that is only a couple of seconds, sometimes that's all that is needed in order for you to collect your thoughts and be able to say something that just, I don't know, you're proud to say makes more sense. I've also mentioned mirroring here, and this is more so a suggestion once you feel more confident going into interviews. I really don't want to overcomplicate this, but mirroring is basically when you are sort of like copying their actions in terms of body language. But I'm going to leave it there at that, just because that's just kind of one extra thing that you would need to think about, and I definitely wouldn't suggest that it's definitely not up there as one of the most important things. Is my point. The next point of being prepared is to understand the job description. And there's a chance that you may not have it. It is okay to ask for it before the interview if you do not have it. It's understandable. You want it to be prepared. And this is going to really support you in having an understanding of the types of questions that you may be asked in the interview, apart from just, really understanding like what this role is, so that you are going to be able to communicate why you are ideal for the job. I will mention AI a couple of times within this masterclass, and obviously AI, I'm sure you all use it to different maybe some of you are more advanced with it, maybe some of you don't use it at all, but it can be a tool to help you in the interview process. And one way that I would highly recommend using it would be, if you do have the job description, then you can put it into something such as Claude, and you can say, I have a job interview, this is the role, I would really appreciate if you could give me some questions that you predict that I will be asked based on this. And if you also put your CV in, then it will be able to pull out some real life examples of your skills and your experience, and then you can use that in a way to practice. So I want to move on now to talk about questions. And I know that a couple of people in the chat mentioned that questions can stress them out, like they're just not knowing what questions they may be asked. And the ebook that Dom put in the chat earlier has actually got a lot of questions in it. So you can use those to practice. They are like all of the standard common ones that you will find in every sector and every department. And in my interview preparation sessions, I do support people basically with role play, where I will be talking about different questions they may have. They will answer them, and then I will give them feedback so that I can support them in that way. So I've got a few questions here on the screen that are common that you do come across, and those are: tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work here? What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Tell me about a time you faced a challenge at work, and where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? So I just want to pull a couple of these questions now and talk about how best to answer them. We don't have enough time to go through every single one, but let's start with tell me about yourself, because this is always asked, or a variation of this sorts of question is asked, and it is a question that I do see people often get wrong, and sometimes it's the very first question that you're asked as well. And if you feel like you said something that maybe wasn't ideal, then it can kind of put you off for the entire rest of the interview. So when someone asks you that, you want to think about a way to answer that is relevant. Okay, so you do not need to share your life story. You don't need to share where you were born. You don't need to share information about your schooling and all of the subjects that you did. Of course, there's always going to be situations where my advice might be slightly different, and that's why one-on-one coaching is really helpful. But if, for example, you are interviewing for your first ever job and you don't have any work experience yet, then of course, sharing a little bit more about maybe your personal life or your school and the subjects, etc., may be relevant. But for most people that have got work experience already, then you want to be focusing on your recent and relevant career history and combine this with your skills and your interests that are relevant for the role that you are applying for. And I really cannot reiterate that word enough, relevance. That is important. Also, they will have your CV already. It is probably in front of them while they are interviewing you. So you don't need to go through your entire CV and repeat it to them. You don't need to be like, well, I started my career doing this. It was this job, this company. These were my duties. Then I moved on. Then I did this. And then it was this, blah, 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 blah. That's not necessary. They already have that information. So you need to be focusing on sharing what is going to match it back to the job that you are applying for with them. Another question, if we take one, would be what are your weaknesses? Okay, now I know that this is one that people really hate to get because people are trying to impress in an interview and they don't want to talk about the things that they are bad at. And ultimately, you have to be honest in an interview. So you can't just say, oh, well, I have none. And honestly, if someone said that, it would potentially come across as arrogant and yeah, just not the right thing to say. So we all have weaknesses. We all do. And again, needs to be relevant for the job because you could talk about weakness that you have that they're not going to care about, but it really wouldn't make sense to do so. But the tip and the key around sharing a weakness that you have is that you follow it up with telling them how you are learning to do better. So let's just take a random example. If you were applying for a field guiding position and they asked what your weaknesses were, then it may relate to the sorts of skills that you need to be a guide, which, as I'm sure many of you know, very like vast. You know, there's geology and then there's the stars and animal behavior, etc. So you may say, well, I would say my weakness is my knowledge of birds in this area. However, I have just purchased a birding app and I also have got a book, and in my sort of spare time in between game drive, then I always try and spend some time learning about the different birds. And even though it is a weakness, I am definitely improving on this. Okay, so you have shared, you've been honest, it is relevant for the job, but at the same time, you have communicated that you are working on it. And this also shows that you are self-aware. And also, I want to add with answering questions that you need to, in effect, sell yourself. So again, be confident. There's that word again. You need to talk about how great you are. Basically, like this is not a time for you to be shy or for you to downplay your achievements and your abilities, because at the end of the day, like this is your opportunity to really shine. And yeah, you should make sure that you do that. So next I want to talk about a way to answer questions, which is called the STAR method. Now, this is a technique to help you to answer behavioral based questions, and you'll be able to do that clearly and concisely. STAR, as you can see on the screen, stands for situation, task, action, and result. So basically, you are describing the situation that you were in and the task that you were doing in that situation and the action that you took. And then you are finishing off with the result. And of course, the result needs to be something positive because, again, you are selling yourself. So I'm going to give an example now, and I'm going to talk us through it because this is really important. I know there's a lot of text on the screen, so don't worry too much about that. One thing I want to say is that often if someone is looking for a star-related response from you, then they may start their question with the words, "Tell me about a time when." Now, if they say that, they are basically prompting you to share an example, and then you automatically know I need to answer in a star related way. But the question I've chosen deliberately, I didn't say in that way, just so that you can also understand that there's different types of questions that you can answer in this way. So the question here is, would you say you are good at problem solving? Now, what you do not want to do is say yes. or not really, like no, you shouldn't do that. You need to share a situation, a task, an action, and a result. So this example I'm sharing, so just listen to the words I'm saying now. In my current role, I am in charge of scheduling for weddings. These take place at the lodge, and recently we had a situation where the priest was running late, and this was going to throw the whole schedule out. I needed to ensure that this didn't impact the flow of the ceremony because timing was critical so that they had enough time for photos in the light at the end. So last minute, I decided to swap around the order of the ceremony. So instead of the dancers doing their wedding song and dance after the ceremony, I had them do the welcome dance beforehand. This gave me enough time to get the priest in place and ready to start right away, right after the dancing. And the couple and the guests loved the day and they had no idea of the change of plan and it all flowed perfectly. Okay, so the situation is that the priest was running late. The task was that you needed to ensure that the scheduling was done perfectly. The action you took was that you made that switch with the dancers, and the result was that everyone had a great time and no one was any the wiser. And again, this is another opportunity where you can use AI. So if you are practicing with AI and you are putting different questions in and getting feedback, then you could ask for it to help you with some star related responses. You have to keep in mind that AI is not going to know what you have done. It's not going to know your career history related to actual scenarios and situations. So just keep that in mind because you don't want to be prompted to say something that is incorrect. Something else I will also say about questions is, of course, practice makes perfect. And that's why we do have all of those questions on our ebook that we have provided for you. But if you are going to use AI as well, then instead of just typing it out, I would recommend that you use it as like the voice kind of activation instead, and you get it to actually speak to you and speak out the questions, and then you will speak out the answers. And I don't want to go into this too much today because I feel like again it's a bit too much for an initial masterclass, but things like your pitch and your tone, like how you say things, also relate to how you come across as being confident. And if you have actually practiced by speaking it out loud, then that is helpful. And AI can give you feedback as well. But of course, if you can practice with a real live person, then that would always be my recommendation, especially with someone that is a professional, such as a career coach. So to sort of finish off the question section here, I want to just share a few like commonly asked questions that I get as a career coach and that my team get. Technical questions. Now, we spoke a bit about behavior questions around the STAR method, but you will also get technical questions. So you should be prepared with examples of your relevant skills, the tools that you're familiar with, your knowledge, and you should be able to explain processes, how you approach tasks, and be ready and prepared with specific outcomes or metrics wherever possible. And also keep in mind in the interview, they may ask you to physically do something. I have been in interviews where people have asked like the interviewer has asked the interviewee for example, they're in a maintenance role, like, oh, like here's all the tools, can you tell me what all of these tools are and how you would use them? I've also been in interviews for people for a reception and sort of administration position, and they've been asked to literally turn on a computer, things like that. Like it sounds crazy, but it can happen, so you should be prepared for that sort of thing as well. Also, questions that relate to the company, and they may ask you questions that relate to the company, like why do you want to work here, which is a really common one. But also, wherever possible, if you can bring your answers back to talk about the company, then that is going to be helpful. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, where we were talking about researching the company, and I was saying how you might find out information about certain things they do that are really unique, or just information that is going to show that you have done your research. You should try and bring that into conversation. So you could relate your answers to the company's mission, the company culture, mention like certain things that have attracted you to want to work for the company. Now, salary and benefits, it's just a logistics thing. People always ask, people are like, what do I do if they ask me about salary? Like, do I bring it up? Don't I bring it up, etc. So I just wanted to address this today because I'm sure that like all of you would be interested in this. First of all, it is best to wait until the end to talk about this because it would just be unusual to start the conversation asking about how much you are going to get paid. But it is okay to ask because it is important, because at the end of the day, like as much as this could be your dream career, it is still a job, and there does still need to be the transactional element, and it's still important that you know and you understand what the salary package on offer is. Now, in an ideal world, hopefully you will already know this prior to the interview when you already applied for the position, but I do know that that is not always the case. So whether they ask you or you ask, it is a topic that should be brought up. And commonly you will be asked, like, what are your salary expectations? Now, if you have already seen the salary on offer, then you can let them know that your expectations are in alignment with the salary that you saw with the position. And you can even just say what it is, just to reiterate, to make sure everyone is on the same page. If there has been a range given, which is also quite common, then you should just share as to what salary you are comfortable with based on the range that they have already shared. If you don't know what the salary is on offer, then you have different ways in which you could approach this. One way would be for you to ask them what the salary range is. You can turn the question back on them. Another would be for you to simply share what salary you are looking for, because you should know this already. You should be confident to be able to give an answer there. And whether you are working already or not working already, like, you should know what the position you're applying for, what would be market related, and you should also know your cost of living and what you need in order to make sure that you have a salary that you would be happy and you would be comfortable with. And again, it's okay if you give a range. And also, if you need more clarity on something, such as the working hours or how many people you may be managing or what exactly the role entails, because perhaps you never did get the job description, then it is okay for you to ask for more information before you provide this conversation. But where possible, I would advise to have this conversation there and then, so it's not something that only happens at a later stage. The last point here is to have questions that you should ask them, and this is also incredibly important. I would always recommend that you have at least 5 questions ready and prepared that you want to ask them. And it is totally fine if you need to write them down and you bring a notebook with you. Like, there's no rule that says that you can't do that if you think that you're going to forget. And the reason I say you should have at least 5 is because there is a good chance that they may have naturally answered some of the questions that you already have prepared. And in an ideal world, you don't want to be right at the end and they're going to turn to you and say, do you have any questions for us? And you say, no, you don't. Now, if you generally don't, because they really did answer all of the questions that you had, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. Let them know that actually you did have some questions prepared. However, they have answered them all, and thank them for doing so. But hopefully you will have some questions for them. And it's important that you do, because it shows that you have taken an interest and also shows that you've done your research, but you are engaged in the sort of information that you would want to get. So you should never ask a question that you have easy access to already. So for example, don't ask a question that you can easily get from Googling the answer or you can find on their website right away. So instead you could ask something such as what the team structure is, who you would be directly reporting to, how many people you would be managing. You could also ask them what the average day looks like in the position. You could ask them how they measure success. So these sorts of things show that you are really invested and you are really interested and you care about the job, you care about the role, and you are already envisioning yourself in it. If you are feeling brave, because you would have to be extra confident to ask this question, you could ask them if they have any hesitations in considering you for the position. And the reason that I say you may need to be a bit brave to ask this is because you may not like the answer to the question. It's sort of putting you in a situation where, in theory, they could communicate why they think you're actually maybe not the best fit for the role. But the reason that it is smart is because it gives you an opportunity to communicate why ultimately they're wrong and you are the right person for the job. And you wouldn't have had that opportunity unless you asked them that question, because regardless, they are going to have those thoughts, whether you ask it or not. So if, you leave the interview and then they are sort of discussing privately and they think, oh, yeah, they would be good. However, there's this one thing that we're not sure about. They may not ask you, they may not follow up with you about it. So if you are able to get clarity on that, then it gives you an opportunity to basically alleviate any concerns that they have, and share any sort of examples around that, which will potentially really help your case. And you may get the job offer just by doing that one thing. Also, remember that you are interviewing them too. It doesn't appear this way, but you are, and it is a two-way street. So you asking them questions, yes, that's your opportunity to find out more about them. You may be getting a tour of the office, the property, etc. You learning more about the company. Like, it's not just necessarily a given that they are going to make you the offer and you are going to accept. You need to decide if you want to accept. You need to decide if this is the right company for you, the right company culture, if this is the right job for you, if you'd be interested in this as your career path. So even if they don't have that mindset, because sometimes people won't, they'll think it's more that they are interviewing you and that, like, they would be shocked if you didn't say yes to the job. Just keep this in mind, because it is another positive mindset thing you can have, and also it will help with that confidence mindset. I also want to just touch on, like, the process kind of after the interview, because that is also important. And again, this can make a difference between whether you perhaps get a job offer or don't. And like I said at the beginning, first impressions count, but so do lasting impressions. And your lasting impression doesn't necessarily have to be the moment that you step out of their office and end the interview. So always in the interview, thank them for their time and reiterate your interest in the role, because at this point, they don't 100% know that you are interested. Ask them when you can expect to hear back from them. There's nothing wrong with doing that. You're not putting pressure on them. You are simply asking a question that is important for you to know. Shake everybody's hand, everyone that's in the room, making eye contact again. And this is a bit of an old school thing that many people don't do anymore, but that's why I'm recommending that you do consider doing it, because it can set you apart from everyone else, and that is to send a thank you email. And also, it is okay to follow up. And just depending on what they say as to when you can expect to hear back from them, that might be in a week's time, it might be in a few weeks, whatever it is, but you use your judgment on when you think it would be best to send a follow-up. And typically that would be done via email. And again, it's your opportunity to reiterate that you're interested in the position and do a check-in. Okay. So congratulations for taking the time to learn today and to prepare yourself for your next interview. It's great that you've taken this opportunity today. It's really going to make a difference. And I would love to hear in the chat how you're all feeling now, after this masterclass. Like, do you feel more confident? Do you feel like you've got more knowledge? Is there anything in particular that you feel is a like a key takeaway from today, something that you hadn't thought of before, or yeah, just something that you felt really supported you. It can be really helpful for us to get like really proper feedback on these masterclasses. Obviously, we are offering them completely for free, and to do so, it can help to really hear from everybody as to what you thought and how you found it. And I also want to finish off. We've got another 5 minutes, but I want to share an offer today, and that is my Career Confidence, Your Guide to Getting Hired online course. We are offering a huge discount of 20% off before the end of July. So if you sign up before July, and Dom is going to be putting some more information about this in the chat. She's going to share the direct link where you can go and find out more information, and also just a PDF which provides more information about all of the different modules and the lessons within this. And I created this, so it is on the best course platform out there. It is an online course, video based, so there's not lots of text and information to read, and there are lots of resources provided with it. And also you will get lifetime access. So for those of you who are currently going through the process of looking for a job, this is great for you to get it ASAP. But also, even in the future, when you are looking for positions, then you can come back to this, and the course is updated on a regular basis. The sorts of things that I cover within this are some of the things we very, very briefly touched on today. I obviously go in much more detail, but we cover so much more. Things around limiting beliefs, because that is often the number one thing that holds us back from either applying for jobs, from getting jobs, where to look for work, for job opportunities, your job application in full, emailing for jobs, ATS, which is an applicant tracking system, which many recruitment companies use, using AI in your job search, how to really sell yourself. So we go into detail about things like your LinkedIn profile and your CV summary, your certificates, your references, CVs just in general, like how long they should be, what you should include, the structure of your CV. LinkedIn is a great platform if you are a job seeker, and we go through like profiles and how to optimize your profile and how to connect with people, sending messages to people, networking, so that's both online as well as in person, things like your elevator pitch, and how to follow up as well on your job search. And really it's like the logistics and the how-tos of getting hired. So that is an offer. Like I say, it's valid until the end of July. If anyone has any questions about this, then you are welcome to reach out to us on our social media platform. And yeah, that concludes today.